God damn. I just realized my mic was muted this whole time. Good evening, everyone. Sorry about that. I was saying that we're putting together an educational stream here. I know YouTube doesn't like that sort of thing, but you know, y'all just yeah, thank you, Solar Power. Yeah, I had my mic muted. I know YouTube does not like that sort of thing. They like to have videos talking about women. That's what you guys like. You guys love to hear about women. And it's funny because you know it's not about women. You know this life is not about women. Getting good with women has nothing to do with women. Being a man has nothing to do with women. Being dominant has nothing to do with women. None of it has anything to do with women at all. But you love to hear that shit. You love to hear it. And you look at the numbers. I mean, if you look at like red pill videos and shit like that, it's been a long time actually since I've seen this. So I'm just making an assumption that those numbers are really freaking high because they spend a lot of time talking about women. But they're smart. You know, those guys are clever. They know that's what you want, so you're going to talk about it. And I will be talking about women a little bit, about why they love dominance and the different types of dominance. But first, we're going to have some education. So work before play. All right. So we're talking about the types of dominance. And there's a lot of them actually, but the 18 or 19 that I have here are the classic types, like the most common types that you're going to come across. All right, so let's jump into it. Okay, so the first one, it's super common. This is actually a type that I partially identify with, and this is the daddy dominance type. Okay, this also exists for women. They're called the mommy dominance, right? But daddy, mommy dominance. And the mommy and daddy doms are really common. And I think this is because I think the daddy dom appears so commonly because men, I think, naturally have a caretaker aspect to us, in the sense that when we have our attention on something, we like to take care of it. Like if you've got a car that you built or a car that you worked really hard to buy or something like that, you take care of it, okay? If you play guitar, you make sure it's clean and well-tuned and all that sort of shit. If you own a home, you take care of your home. Your personal projects, your hobbies, whatever it is, the things in your life, men just have a natural thing for taking care of stuff that they care about. So naturally, it would make sense that if you have a submissive, your part of you is going to want to take care of them. Now, unless you've got like a really high sadism scale, then you're not going to be that way. But most guys, I think, just naturally have that in them. So it would explain why there's so many daddy dom types. All right. The problem that I've seen in this, and I've explained this before in other videos, that there's no shortage of simps in the BDSM community. So just because you are involved in the BDSM scene and people are open with their sexuality and they're open with their preferences and their desires and their fantasies and their kinks and all that shit, it does not mean that you're cured of being a simp. I've come across tons of doms that have symptom in their blood, okay? And they still, while they're in the position of dominant, they still pedestalize and put women submissives above them. They follow after their desires. And I literally hear this all the time where the guy's like, I want to do something with my sub. Give me some ideas for a scene or whatever. She's told me what she wants, and I just want to, fulfill that. And it's like, well, how is that leading? Like she said, this was the post that I saw. The girlfriend or wife, she said that she wanted to do like a free use scene. So a free use in the community means that the submissive is basically relinquishing like almost all of their will, where the dom can just use her for whatever he wants. If he wants to you know, turn her into an anal slut for an afternoon, that's what he wants to do. If he wants to turn her into a footstool, then that's what he wants to do. If he wants her to clean the bathroom with a toothbrush, then that's what he wants her to do. Whatever it is, it's just free use. And then she went ahead and told him specifics of what that means to her, and then he's going to be doing those sort of things. So she's leading him to do what she wants him to do, basically fulfilling her fantasy, not fulfilling his, which is fine, but that's not exactly leading, that's following. Okay. And I've had other back and forth with the guy, and determines that this is his main modality. This is how he rolls. And this is just not the way it goes. This is not being dominant. This is not leading. So, all right, that's it. Let me talk about daddy doms here. All right, daddy doms, really, really common. I don't know if if mommy doms are quite as common, but anyways. Daddy dominants are usually seen as caring and protective and make good partners for submissives who are vulnerable, sensitive, or otherwise need that kind of care. Nurturing doms often like subs for their playfulness, cuteness, and innocence, or even naivete, and take responsibility for their subs' well-being very seriously. So within that, there's usually protocols and things like that where the dominant is minding over a lot of her daily activities. He's minding her food. He's minding her exercise, when she goes to sleep, when she wakes up, making sure that she has a journal. So there's like all sorts of things where their self-care is monitored. All right. And then within that, there's like positive reward systems, and consequence systems, all that good stuff. So there's 5 examples and ideas for dominating as a daddy. And these things do come up from time to time. And there's a lot more to this, but here's just 5 examples. There's scolding for when the sub makes a mistake. There's spanking when they step out of line. There's reassurance, such as like cuddling your sub and telling them they're a good girl. And there's, lots of ways that can show up. Protecting their subs' feelings, their mental state, their bodies, like all sorts of like angles when it comes to the sub. And praising, so they're listening for, like, they get praised for listening and obeying. And that's even more so a thing if the submissive has a praise kink, if they really get off on being told that they're doing the right thing. So that's a little bit about daddy doms. The next one here is masters or mistresses. Okay, although master or mistress could be a nickname used in any DS relationship or BDSM scene, a couple that goes by master and slave frequently engages in 24/7 power exchange, which is also known as total power exchange or TPE. It's common for a TPE dom to be called a master or mistress and not a dominant. So the way I see it is that a master is a type of dominant, but because these are all types of domination, okay, but it's in its own sort of breed, and because it takes a certain type of mind. And I think that a master is the type that is very, very much into being in control. Like, these are type A personalities. These are people who are hyper detail focused. They easily get irked by very small things being out of line. Like, everything has to be very organized for these people to feel sane. And so they're watching over all details and like to be in full, complete control. And then on the other side of that are slave types who enjoy relinquishing all of that control. They don't want any fucking responsibility. They don't want to be making any decisions. They just want to be told what to do. And that's it. So in TPE, the power exchange never ends. Instead, it permeates the couple's entire lives, with the master or mistress taking control of all or most of aspects of their life together, potentially removing the slave's ability to argue or to decline. So that happens in, just really extreme versions of this. And people don't typically just jump into a master-slave relationship. Typically, this is something that takes years to develop, because in order to, imagine how much trust the sub must have in that type of dominant, how much trust they have to have in their master in order to relinquish all decision-making abilities. You can't even speak up because you trust that your master has your best interests in mind. So that takes years to develop. And also a little bit about the 24/7 TPE. That doesn't only happen in master-slave relationships. There are dom-sub relationships of all types that can be total power exchange or partial power exchange. So it's just a certain kind of power exchange that's known as master-slave. The next one here is the Brat Tamer. I like Brat Tamers. As you might have guessed, a Brat Tamer is the counterpart to a Brat, which we talked about before. A submissive who is known for being rebellious and hard-headed. Brat Tamers must equally be strong to earn a Brat submission and understand the nature of this behavior. When a Brat Tamer uses discipline or force on their sub, that attention ultimately makes the Brat feel desired, cared about, safe, and noticed. The patience and even temper necessary to be a successful Brat Tamer aren't traits possessed by every Dom type. Some prefer subs who won't talk back. However, many Brat Tamers find the challenge or the behavior of a Brat to be amusing and fulfilling. So they get fulfillment from the psychological back and forth of getting into this intermix, and I get it, right? Because I like a little bit of brattiness, just a little bit, because it keeps things lively, where they kind of joke and poke the bear a little bit and play around and, just skirt that line. And like, look, Daddy, my toes over the line. The one you told me not to cross. It's not like all the way over, but just my toes over the line. I like that stuff. It's playful. It keeps things lively. I've been in situations where it's just complete and utter obedience, and it's great in one way. It's a double-edged sword, because it's great in one way, very smooth, very fulfilling, but it's a little boring. And I like that little spark of heat that comes with brattiness. And also I enjoy dealing out consequences. Okay, I like the whole formula that's going on there. Okay, so aspects of Brat taming: physically restraining and overpowering them if the Brat resists. There's bondage, giving orders which may be ignored or resisted, providing punishment when necessary, but without losing their temper. All right, and there's lots of punishment ideas that I will be having available on my website as part of the second level. All right, so the first level of my membership is just the videos. The second level of the membership is videos plus documents plus 2 calls with me a month. And then, of course, the third level is the one-on-one coaching, where you just get everything. You get all the documents, all the videos, all the audios, and my time. All right, so showing strength. That's one way to do it. And in response to bratty behavior, backing down or appearing weak is not what the Brat wants. They want to feel your force. They want to feel your strength and your groundedness. Remaining patient and respectful, showing the Brat that they are not too much to handle and they're cared for. So, like, just someone who can handle their bullshit. And if you don't get perturbed, you don't get thrown off your square, you don't get upset, you don't lose your temper. Now, getting a little frustrated, I think that's normal, or getting irritated, but getting angry, that's not supposed to happen for a Brat tamer. All right, the fourth one here is a rope top or a rigger. We talked about rope bunnies. This is the other side of it. In BDSM, a rope top or a rigger is a dominant who is especially or only interested in rope bondage. So there's some doms who do not engage in any sexual activity and they just do rope. And like, that's all they're into, right? And that's cool. Not for me, but I can respect it. And I find the knot tying and the photography that ensues to be very artful. I just don't have the patience for it. They might dabble in everything from suspension to chest harnesses to hog tying, all sorts of crazy stuff. If you want to see videos or photographs, you can just look up Shibari on Google and just look at the images there. And some of them are really quite interesting. 5 responsibilities of a rope top is preparing. So rope and accessories, such as the proper type of rope for the session, carabiners, ties, scissors, first aid kit, all that good stuff. Focusing on their sub, discussing any injuries or issues before starting, focusing on bodily reactions while tying. Carefully tying so that rope sits without twisting or chafing, without pulling rope across the skin, or letting loose rope letting loose rope hit the sub, ensuring the submissive safety by checking that the rope isn't frayed, suspension that can hold their weight, avoiding pressure on the organs, pressure points, like nerve centers, listening to safe words, and quickly untying or letting down the subs in time of emergency. Practicing, that's another aspect. Like these rope guys, they're always practicing because they're trying to, it's a craft in itself. Okay, so tying knots can include watching videos, reading books and sites, and attending workshops. The fifth one is the fin dom. This is the type of dom that is the counter to the fin sub, and fin stands for financial. So but the financial power exchange shouldn't be confused with traditional sex work, where the sex worker provides sexual stimulation in exchange for money. That's not what this is. Fin dom controls their submissive's money in some kind of way. Knowing that someone else controls their finances is part of the appeal for fin subs. So they get aroused, like psychologically and probably sometimes physically aroused, by relinquishing the control of their finances to a dominant. Because the fin sub's money and not their body is controlled, these arrangements work well for long-distance relationships. Aspects of financial domination is restricting access to money in accounts, giving access to money like an allowance, receiving money from a fin sub for services, and humiliation play such as like verbal humiliation, a big component for some but not all fin dom relationships. The next one is a service top. So if you're the type of dominant who enjoys giving sensation and stimulation to your partner to fulfill their needs, you might be a service top. So this is the type of dominant that they're not into like running the person's life. They like to be on top of the situation. They like to be in control, and they provide a service basically. So it's like kind of like going to like a massage therapist or a chiropractor, but just for sexual needs or domination needs or impact needs or what have you. Service tops may not find that being dominant is part of their personalities. Instead, they take the active role during BDSM scenes because they enjoy servicing people. So like I said, it's like, the woman's coming to them to feel a certain way, usually with some sort of like sexual intensity or, all sorts of needs. The gamut is wide. And then the service top provides that. This role ends when the scene does, and their ideal partners may be bottoms, but not necessarily submissives. And we talked about that with the submissives, where they like to engage and feel, but then once they leave the dungeon or the bedroom or whatever, they're just back to their normal lives. They're not into being a submissive. Service topping can be seen as the counterpart to topping from the bottom. All right, but you don't want a submissive topping from the bottom. That's a whole issue. All right. So topping from the bottom, just really quick, is same as like driving from the back seat, where you're telling the driver what to do, wanting to be in control, but you're not actually grabbing for control. And it's manipulation. And also it can be linked to not having trust. So if the sub is not entrusting to the dominant, they might be trying to gain control through the things that they're doing. All right. What's up, Real King? All right, back to my list here. 6 examples of service topping. There's binding the sub, performing impact play, providing stimulation, assisting other dominants or tops like in a play party or a dungeon, negotiating with bottoms before a scene, and heeding the safe words. I think like a lot of guys actually who would like to dominate or feel that sort of thing, they're actually going to be service tops. And that's no like lesser position, especially if like that's just who you are and you have the most enjoyment from that position or from that role. All right, the next one is the owner. Some subs play as pets, dogs, cats, horses, whatever. Their dominant partners are often owners. Together, these couples replicate the relationship between an animal and its owner with behaviors depending on the specific animal. So for example, pony play probably involves more training and manual labor than other types of pet play. Pet play creates the opportunities for unique accessories and toys, including collars, muzzles, leashes, tack for ponies, and more. For examples of the owner behavior is training, securing accessories and gear, grooming their pet, and providing other types of care such as water, food, and attention. This can sometimes lead to like some sort of humiliation, but if they're really into being a pet, they're not going to find it humiliating to eat food off the floor like a dog would. All right, number 8 here is Dom, spelled D-O-M-M-E, and this is just the feminized version of Dom. So this refers to a female dominant and is pronounced the same. That's really the one difference when it comes to dominant versus Dom, D-O-M-M-E. Technically, a mommy Dom is a misnomer because it would be a mommy Dom, D-O-M-M-E. So really, there's no difference. And they've got their own subcategories, like such as a pro dom. So this is like a woman who she's a professional and then would pay her to be dominated. There's a dominatrix. Some people refer to professional dom as a dominatrix, while others use that description for any female dom, which can cause confusion. A femdom can refer to the woman or activities or relationship, and is a common label for porn featuring women in charge. However, some people describe the power exchange relationships between dom and a male submissive specifically as femdom. Gender doesn't really necessarily describe the way a person dominates. A woman can be any type of dom on this list, just like any man can be any type of dom on this list. Aside from pro doms and mommies, there usually aren't many types of doms, D-O-M-M-E, as there are doms. So a woman can be a rigger. She can be a findom. She can be a mommy dom. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, domination is just one force coming over another force. And so it can come from anyone, really. Like, domination doesn't have a source. However, that said, there are more male doms than there are female doms, because I just think it's in our nature. So now that's not 100% across the board, because there's submissive men and there's dominant women, just not as much. There's not as many submissive men, although I think that number is growing actually. And there's not as many dominant women, although I think that number is growing. Anyways, so examples of female domination: providing stimulation and sensation, giving orders and punishment, caring for a partner's well-being, pegging. So these are, same sort of stuff that like male doms do. The next one is a primal dom. So primals, they're into wild and animalistic type kinks and BDSM, which can be considered edge play and like riskier kink by many. It's quite unlike the behavior exhibited by a gentle dominant. Primal behavior can be triggered by clawing, scratching, biting, or other actions by the partner, sometimes known as prey. So you've got the primal and you've got the prey. Some primal doms prefer physical strength in their bodies over bondage and other tools. So like if you're into like just like being raw with your hands and using your body and your hands as the means of control, and you're not really into like that sexy dirty talk, but you're more inclined to growl or something like that, you might be a primal dom. So occasionally some primal doms play with other primal doms or alphas, and the power exchange flows back and forth, which is less common for other dominant types. So like imagine like say like a wolf pack, but the, who's ever, I guess, more alpha or more dominant in that situation, within the play party or whatever, it flows and changes between them. 4 common actions of the primal dominant is chasing, having rough sex, making animalistic noises, and using their senses, especially the sense of smell. I would say smell and taste. The next one is the white knight dominant. The white knight dom is a type of dom who views himself as the rescuer of their submissive, righting wrongs and battling foes. Many see themselves as a true altruistic type person. Chivalry is often a cornerstone in their beliefs and personality. White knights can become frustrated when encountering problems they cannot fix and may focus too much on saving people, opting for vulnerable or broken partners. This type of dom is often male. And so this is where I see a lot of simps as well. So you can find simps in the daddy doms and you can find simps in the white knight doms. I doubt you're going to find symptom in, say, primal doms, okay, or sadists. So it's like where they might have that affliction in their mind, they go into BDSM, they're going to gravitate towards the type of domination that suits their pathology, all right, their simp pathology. So, and then that's if you've read Dr. Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, it explains that simps or nice guys have a problem with always wanting to help, always wanting to be of service, always wanting to fix problems, okay? And the opposite side of the white knight is the princess type sub. 3 examples of white knight dom: solving problems, protecting, and doting on a submissive, right? So like doting, that's a very nice guy, simpy thing to do. All right, the next one is the sadist. All right, doesn't need much explanation, but a sadist is the type of dom who loves to cause pain. All right, they delight in coming up with unique ways to cause pain to their partners. This pain can be physical or psychological, as would happen with the humiliation and degradation. Also, just mind games. Of course, we're still talking about BDSM, and consent is a must. So this isn't an actual sadist who would cause pain that really harms their partner. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, in the sense that the submissive is asking for it. They're permitting it. And also within certain ranges, right? Because everybody has their limits. So a submissive might be fine with bruising, some scratching, maybe electricity, but when it comes to opening the skin, say with a blade, they're like, no, you're not going to open my skin. And that's fine. Like, everybody has their limits and preferences. Of course, remember in BDSM and kink, you hurt without harming. Someone who gets angry, takes out their aggression on their partner, or ignores their sub's well-being isn't a safe dom. So that's just a good thing to really bring up at this time. If you are upset about something, if you're feeling angry, do not engage with any sort of play with the woman that you're with. So like, let's say a woman pissed you off, okay, and you'd like to deliver a spanking. Like, let's say she broke a rule or something like that. Wait until you've calmed down. Wait until you are level-headed. I suggest do not engage in spanking when you're annoyed, when you're pissed off. Wait until you're clear-headed, okay? All right, so, the sadism is pretty self-explanatory. They cause pain, but a good dom sadist is also well adept at aftercare. And aftercare is learning to care for the things that you've done that are attending to the physical injury, so to speak, or the physical pains that you caused, and the mental and emotional pains that you may have caused. And so each sub is going to have their own way of feeling better, which kind of like brings them back down to earth, allowing the endorphins and the adrenaline to kind of like drain out their system. Oftentimes a sub will get sad or depressed, okay? They'll just feel off, and they need to be like held. They need some chocolate, they need some tea, they need something to like kind of help bring them to feeling whole again, feeling good, because the release of endorphins, all of that release, and sometimes a very strong emotional release when they're going through their own like masochistic sort of thing, it's really draining on the system. And so it's like they feel good, but they feel bad at the same time, because their body was just put through something, their mind was just put through something, and it's up to the dominant to kind of hold that and care for it and bring her back down to earth. All right, next one is a leather dom. This type of dominant is part of the greater leather subculture. So within BDSM, there's a subculture which is all about leather, right? Which arose among members of the military and primarily consists of gay men. And this is like going back to what's called the old guard, which is like the very beginnings of BDSM, in culture. And and it's like usually like it started, I believe, with military guys, and with a strong emphasis on leather and the gay community. Because of this, some leather doms and subs may not consider themselves part of the BDSM community or as having DS relationships. Excuse me. And so this is just like a subculture within a subculture. So you could just like how the riggers can just be completely into rope and not into anything else within BDSM, not even engage in sexual activity. The like leatherheads can be this way as well, where they're just into like the leather fetish, and they're not into having sex, they're not into domination, they're not into power exchange, like none of that stuff. But that doesn't mean they're exclusively like that. There's plenty of leather doms who are in the BDSM community. Leather Dom's kinky activities can include any in this guy, but also include engagement, which, that can be another topic. But, portraying masculinity through leather outfits. Tops are known to wear Eurocaps, personal style, engaging in motorcycle clubs, things of that nature, participating in leather events, and practicing traditions, usually based on military protocol. All right, the next one is a pleasure dom. I think this is another common one for a lot of guys who are getting into domination. This is a relatively newer term that appears to have taken off on TikTok and isn't really used in person. And there's like a lot of debate between a pleasure dom and a service top, because it seems like when described, it's basically the same thing. But it's like, I think people who are categorized as a service top wanted to have the moniker of dominance. They were feeling bad, like they weren't included in like the dom club. So they shifted and they're like, no, I'm not a service top, I'm a pleasure dom. That's what I think. All right. So pleasure dom gets their sexual gratification from fulfilling their partner's sexual needs. Sounds like a pleasure top or a service top. The more pleasure they can give, the better. Sex toys and blindfolds are commonly used by pleasure doms. Pleasure doms are typically male and their subs are female. Some disagree that this is a type of dominant because there may not be any power exchange. Pleasure dominance might be considered an aspect of service topping, like I said. So I just think like they just wanted to have that title, and that's all it is. But understand, dom, like I just mentioned, there needs to be some element of power exchange, or there is no dominance, right? So, 3 parts, there are 3 aspects. Pleasure dom is edging, right? So that's like bringing someone close to orgasm and then letting them drop down, close to orgasm, bring it down. And this can go on for a long time, all right? And some submissives love to be edged because it builds the arousal. And then once you finally let them have an orgasm, it's like super explosive, okay? Orgasm denial. That can be a form of punishment or something that leads to arousal, and torturing with orgasm. So bringing someone to orgasm, say like with a wand, and then not releasing it. Because after orgasm, guys, we know like our dicks become really sensitive. Same thing happens to a clit after a woman has an orgasm. Very, very sensitive. Now imagine if that didn't have any sort of release, like it didn't stop, it just kept going. All right. So the next one is just a basic top. All right. A top is the active participant in a scene and the counterpart to a bottom. They aren't necessarily a dominant and might only play the active role during a scene, perhaps to please their partner without having a dominant personality or engaging in any kind of true power exchange. It's kind of like the opposite of a TPE dom. You won't really hear someone described as a dom top because of this difference. It's kind of like contradictory of terms. However, you could think of them as like bedroom dominance only, similar to bedroom subs, but this is like splitting hairs, right? To me, that just sounds like a service top. Examples of topping is like spanking, blindfold or binding the partner, respecting safe words, knowing their tools. So like I said, I think that guys, like a lot of guys who are interested in experiencing a dynamic or a power exchange, I think that really they'll find themselves mostly comfortable as a top. All right, the next one is a feeder. So this is definitely a less common type of dom. Feederism is a very specific fetish in which people get off on eating or feeding someone else to the point of discomfort. The feedee or the gainer is one who eats, while the feeder participates by providing the food. So certain things like obviously like feeding the partner or fetishizing like fat bodies. The next one is a mentor. So a dominant mentor isn't so much of another type of dom as it is someone who is dominant in experience and lifestyle and potentially the community as a whole, which allows them to guide people who are new to these things. Submissives can also be mentors. So really it has everything to do with your experience level. All right. And so that's really what's important there. Okay. King Solo Power, you got a question here. How would you discover her fantasy by not looking like a weak dom? Well, first of all, don't ever worry about looking weak, right? Because then you're like I've talked about this many times about having your head in their head. Okay, your head has to stay in your head at all times, right? So just by that statement alone, I mean, it's a good question, and I'm not trying to knock you or anything, but it reveals that you've wondering and worrying about what she's thinking of you. All right. And so you got to be observant of that habit and then break that habit. But discovering her fantasies, that actually can come through leadership. So it really depends on your level of intimacy with that person already. But usually, like, if you've already started having sex, you've already started kind of playing around and you're getting comfortable with one another, then you can start revealing your own fantasies. Okay. Now, if it has something to do with, say, C&C, right, which is consensual non-consent, that's a very extreme sort of fantasy, I would leave that off the table, right, at first, and start coming in with like a little bit more tame fantasies. And you start talking about them and showing your interest and enthusiasm. Now, why is that important? Think of any other situation where someone's talking non-sexual, where someone's talking about their interest and enthusiasm about anything. Okay, a movie they saw, a concert they went to, a book they read, a hobby they just started. When they're enthusiastically talking about something, it gets you more interested. Like you want to hear more. You get drawn in. Okay, so if you're showing genuine enthusiasm for your own fantasies, your own desires, and things you want to try that are palatable at first, right, to other people, it's not like some more like freaky stuff or dangerous stuff, then they're more likely to be like moving in the same direction, feeling your enthusiasm, and then more likely to share. Okay, so it comes through showing that you're comfortable as an example for them to follow, and they will likely become more comfortable. Now, is that like 100%? No, right? But you gain like a better chance of them opening up just by showing that you're comfortable with your own sexuality, your own sensuality, your own fantasies, and there's no judgment. So that's another thing. So any other time, like within your interactions, never show any kind of judgment whatsoever. Okay, I mean, unless it's like obviously like something serious, like having to do with like animals and children and mistreating them. But other than that, no judgment. Do not judge her on anything. None of her beliefs, none of her values, none of her opinions, none of that shit. Okay, nor should you actually care to begin with. Okay, but the judgment will send signals and it will cause her to tighten up. And once she gets tight, then it starts leading to not trusting. Okay. And when there's no trust, then there's no vulnerability, then there's no opening up, then there's no fantasies, and there's no play. Okay. So it's just that, a lot of things are connected to that. So 1, stop thinking about what she's thinking about and worrying about it. It doesn't matter. 2, don't judge. And 3, be open with some of your more tame fantasies in the means of being able to lead her to doing the same. Okay. Hope that helped. Okay, so we talking about mentors. So when it comes to mentoring, some dominants mentor other dominants to help teach them the skills that they'll need to guide their future submissive. That's what I do. Some submissives seek out sub-mentors for the same reason. So I've got a couple of friends. They're submissives. They've been for many, many years, and they actually have businesses on the side where they teach other women how to be more submissive because it's an art form in itself. And there's just like how guys coming into learning about dominance and their own identity and all that stuff, there's roadblocks, there's psychological problems, there's tethers in the minds that prevent sort of development and moving forward. Submissive have the same issue, and it all has to do with freedom. It all has to do with freedom of the self, and we have all kinds of ropes binding us to preventing us from expressing ourselves. And so both doms and subs have things to work through in order to get to their true nature and to be free and comfortable. So going on here, it says here, however, a dominant could mentor a sub and provide information and expertise about BDSM that subs don't have access to. A dominant mentor and submissive mentee do not exchange power in the same way that a DS relationship does. Okay, so it's more like a teacher and a student. Okay, A person who uses mentorship to prey on new submissives might be more of a fake dom, which I'll get into later on. So ideas for a dominant mentor is listening to the mentee, giving advice, displaying patience, teaching, providing structure, and helping. So you can be a mentor and not be in a relationship, but if you're in a relationship, you're probably going to be mentoring, if that makes sense. All right, the next one is a gentle or soft dom. A soft or gentle dominant might not like to play with brats or other types of subs that require you to be forceful, because a soft dom is not going to be a forceful type. Some soft doms avoid anything that causes pain entirely, while others incorporate light activities like spanking, okay? Examples of soft doming is nurturing the partner, encouraging growth and self-love, discussing things sternly instead of punishing, and emphasizing aftercare after a scene. Note that some people might call themselves soft doms to indicate they're not super dominant. Okay, so it's just a nice way to say that, like, I'm not a, knuckles on the ground sort of dude, and I'm gonna like care for you. Again, I think in soft doms you're gonna find a lot of simps making their way into that part of the scene. Okay, the next one is the breeder. There doesn't seem to be a consensus about the use of this term within the breeder fetish community, which can be a little bit confusing. Some people are incredibly turned on by the idea of being or getting someone pregnant, and this may stay in the realm of roleplay where dirty talk and unnoticed birth control are used. However, some people take it all the way to actually getting people pregnant. The two common definitions of a breeder include anyone who's into this fetish or the man impregnating someone else. When it comes to getting someone else pregnant, there can certainly be some domination. So, some aspects are discussing the fetish, saying how much they want to get someone pregnant, penetrating and ejaculating without a condom or birth control, and fetishizing their partner's pregnant or fertile body, perhaps enjoying sex during pregnancy, potentially viewing it as their own property. And the last one here is the fake dom. And, this is pretty prevalent within the community as well. And we end up with a type of dom here that many don't consider to be a real dominant. You see, a fake dom is all about getting their needs met without caring about their partner or taking the responsibilities of a dominant seriously. Also, they tend to put on a facade that they're into a certain something or that they're a certain type of way. Sometimes they'll actually love bomb, and it's to gain the trust and willingness of subs, and then they can come around to being very manipulative, very abusive, and or extremely dismissive after using the sub, and then you feel like, I don't need you anymore, and then move on to another one. Few people would call this dom type a caring dominant for obvious reasons. They may focus on sex more than other aspects of intimate power exchange. Okay, like I said, BDSM hasn't anything really to do with sex. It has to do with mental aspects and exchange of power. That's what this world is about. That's what DS is about. That's what DS relationships are about. It's not about sex. We just happen to be humans who enjoy sex, and that ends up being in our types of relationships. But BDSM and DS relationships are not about sex. It's not on the forefront, okay? It's just a fun and interesting way to express dominance. But dominance can be expressed in so many other aspects of the relationship that are actually even more impactful, okay? So it says here that they may focus on sex more than other aspects of intimate power exchange, ignore safety precautions such as aftercare, expect submission from any sub. So these are the guys, like literally these guys will say be on like FetLife or something like that, go into the DMs of a woman, and they'll do this on Instagram as well, and immediately start calling them a slave. They're like, "Hey slave, are you ready to bow to me?" And it was like, that's like their first message. That's what they say. So it's like these guys are sometimes like a little bit tweaked, okay? And that respect that it takes time to get to know a potential partner, whether you're kinky or not, okay? So they ignore like the basic human means of communication. They're socially inept a lot of times. All right, a real dom respects safety and the boundaries and understands that if you need to take things slowly or want to vet each other before playing or getting into a relationship, that's fine. All right. So now that you're familiar with like some of the most common ones, you can kind of think about what resonates with you the most. All right. Now, the other part of what I was talking about. Oh yeah, that is really fucked up, King. You know, and it's wild. Like they're just like in any other aspect of life. All right, where there's men and women interacting, you're gonna have a large group of guys who are just fucked up. And they don't know how to interact. They don't know how to engage with women in a socially calibrated way that doesn't come off as fucking creepy. But it's like turned up within the BDSM community because, like I said before, you get a lot of extremes in the BDSM community. You have like some really, truly wise and experienced and just brilliant people in this community, like super high IQ. And then you have some of the most dense, socially inept morons in this community, like the worst, even worse than that, where they're predators, they're psychological predators, they're sexual predators, they're abusers. And they come into these spaces because they think that this is like an open playground, like it's like open hunting season. And because, to be fair, there are some very damaged women. So similarly, like with DOMs, with subs, it's the same way. There are some amazing submissives where they know themselves so well. And then there's some that are truly damaged that they will easily fall into the hooks of a predator or a manipulator or professional gaslighter. And it's unfortunate because it leaves a wake of damage and, you know, produces like a bad name for the scene. Okay. So, you know, I was talking about like, so there's just fucked up people everywhere. It's just within the community, things get turned up, like the volume gets turned up. So, you know, I was mentioning about why women love these sort of aspects. Okay. And to put it quite simply, it's because it's not common in life. So they got their regular day-to-day lives, and everything's about being balanced. Everything's about being democratic. Everything's about perception and fitting in and making sure you're not making people upset and playing along and all this stuff. Okay. Like just, it might be hard, but just like imagine like being like a woman, like living like regular conventional society, going to work, interacting with all these people and doing this and that. It's bland, but inside, okay, there is so much going on inside the minds of a woman. And when you go down the pathway of sexuality, it's fucking wild. It's just a wide open array of crazy shit that they would have interest in, and it's connected to their emotions. Okay, because like guys, we can have thoughts and beliefs and ideas, and it's actually hard for us to engage our emotions with certain thoughts. And it's funny because that's how you actually get certain things done in life. It's like when you have a goal and it's attached to a belief, and then that belief has an emotion attached to it, and then that can become a vision, you're more apt to actually make that vision come into a reality when you bring emotions into it, because that's how you make beliefs real. Okay. And that's for the same reason why they say don't talk about religion and politics in bars, because beliefs have emotional ties. And when you get people drinking, then you get people fighting over the bullshit. But that's aside from the point. Women, they have that natural bond. They have that natural inclination where their thoughts and their emotions are easily bound together. And they have to work to separate them. And this is why they find like being in certain situations and certain types of sections in society difficult. You know, like say like in certain work environments where they're like, oh man, like my boss isn't really paying attention to like how I'm feeling. He just wants shit done. And, you know, and that's just hard for them sometimes. Okay. But just note that their thoughts and feelings are so intertwined. And sexually speaking, their sexual minds, their erotic minds also have emotions. So there's this whole pathway that's inside them that they can only visit during private, quiet times with themselves, with their imagination while they're sitting on the subway, while everyone's in their, their own little world, and she's thinking about all kinds of crazy shit. Like when there's a chance to, they can. And when there's like the fluctuation within the month, when they have like the heightened hormones and they really want to fuck, it's like double. All right. Where they're like sitting there on the train, like looking at the guy, like holding on the strap hanger. And, she's like looking at his dick through his pants and like thinking about the fantasy of like, wow, wouldn't it be great? Like if I just started blowing him right now. And you're thinking, well, no, they don't think about it. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Not all the time, not every woman, but yes, this is something that's thought about. Like the things that my girl has told me, the fantasies she's had while she's going to work. And it's like all kinds of stuff that's going on in her head. This is what happens with women. And part of what's in there is the sense of domination, because life is so rote and boring and plain and predictable, where you have to follow the rules and play along and, just be that good girl. When there's this part of them that doesn't want to think, that doesn't want to feel that boring, bland, like saltine cracker life. They want something with meat, okay? They want flavor and variety. And that's what the domination brings. Because it says, we're doing this, we're going to have this, you're going to experience this, and there's some things that you will experience that you're not going to expect. And it's going to hit you, and you're going to love it. And that's what they're after. That's what they're after, that strong pumps of variety. Okay? And it's like, the sad part is that, women can't show this part of their nature, because there's so many of those guys that I was mentioning before, these fake doms and fake men, and that are really creepy and they're really needy. And sometimes their neediness can turn into something that's quite destructive. That can be very destructive to women on a psychological level, as well as a sexual level or a physical level. So if a woman's like, I want to be held down, I want to be hogtied, right? So a hogtie is like when you're on your stomach, where your hands are bound behind your back, your ankles are bound behind your back, and all of it is brought together with either like an X strap or just rope and binding. And then I want to be face fucked. Like that's something that I imagine a lot of women think about, and that would really, really turn them on. Okay. They can't reveal that to anybody, because they know from you guys who love to judge women that if they revealed that, they would be a whore, they'd be a slut, they wouldn't be worth marriage, they wouldn't be this, they would be that. And they're like, you know what? I'd rather be accepted. I'd rather be viewed as like not that, even though that's not my full nature. I'd rather just be generally accepted than to be judged into the gutter. Okay? And so they can't show that for judgment. They also can't show that part of their nature for fear of damage. Because just imagine if like women came around, like I was reading those statistics, from 12,700 women, half of them said that they wanted to be dominated. And this includes hair pulling, choking, being pinned, being, like forced blowjobs to the point of crying, being smacked around, having their tits whacked with a flogger, anal torture, having their feet whacked with a cane, all sorts of stuff. Like there's tons of things that fall into domination. Plus the mental aspect, being put in double binds, putting into like situations where they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. Okay. Many women love that shit. Now, if you got this average creep who hears about this, what do you think he's going to do when he's hungry and thirsty and starving for female intimacy? To touch women, to taste them. He's going to tear her apart. He's going to catch a case. He's going to have the police coming after him. Okay? He's going to do some stupid shit. So, like, just imagine, like, just from a woman's perspective, how serious it is on so many levels that they cannot reveal their nature. This is why it's important for them to be trusting, to trust you, that you're not going to judge them, that you're not going to damage them or kill them or mutilate them. All right. Both like mentally and physically. All right. really important. But once they have that ability to relax, then this whole other aspect that's been behind a wall opens up, and then they have just this whole other side of themselves that they keep in a box that they don't get to share with most people. Most men don't get to see this or experience it. The women themselves don't get to experience this because of the guys, the average guys that they experience year after year, day after day. So when they have the opportunity to let that wall down and open up that box into that whole other world of themselves, the amount of freedom that they must feel, I can't even imagine, because I don't know what it's like to live that way. But I can just imagine how frustrating that's got to be. Almost depressing that you cannot, you can only show certain acceptable aspects of yourself. Even in intimate situations where you're like, I like this guy, we're having sex, blah, 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 but you catch this wind, where they probably catch this wind that he's a judgmental kind of guy. He's got a stick up his ass. He's got this thing about fucking pair bonding and DNA left in her pussy from the last guy she had sex with. So all that kind of bullshit. So she's like, okay, I like this guy, but that means that like their sex life is just going to be this narrow hallway. And he's going to think that it's great. And she's like, but this is 20% of me. There's 80% that you're never going to see because you make me feel uncomfortable. Then there's that guy who she gets with on the side who doesn't give a shit. He's so comfortable in his skin. He loves and encourages her to relax and open up to him. And so she does. And then he gets to see all that shit. And then the other guy who she's been with finds a videotape from a couple years ago, and he's like, what the fuck? My woman's a total whore. Why don't I get to see these sort of things? Well, because you judge her for being a whore. Or he flips out and breaks up with her because now he thinks she's a whore. So it's wild, man. Like there's so much of women that guys don't see. So much. And that's not even like just the sexual stuff. Like there's aspects of their personalities that most guys don't get to see because they're so concerned with their judgments. They're so concerned with women being a certain way and having to be in a certain way that being that dogmatic with it, which is why part of the reason why I hate red pills so much, because it's so dogmatic. But you being dogmatic forces them, and by reaction, to be a limited version of themselves. And like, just that's got to feel so gray, so depressing. Okay, like if you just let go, stop judging women, you'll see more of them, and then your idea of female nature is going to change completely. It's going to change completely. So Kevinism7 said there's a book named The Secret Garden written by Nancy Friday. If some of these guys knew about how far women's fantasies are. Yeah, I've read that. And what's funny is that while the fantasies in that book are, fairly tame as it would pertain to, say, like BDSM culture, where people are like taking shit on people's chests and stuff like that. That book is great in the sense that it was all anonymous. There were anonymous interviews, and Nancy Friday collected these letters, or she performed some of them in person, and just put them together in a book for people to read. And they're not crazy, but the whole notion is that because of the nature of the interview, women felt comfortable enough to open up. They felt comfortable enough to reveal parts of themselves and let that part of their nature flow. Now, here's the thing. If a woman spends too much time with that box closed within themselves, they get used to it. And then they start believing the judgments themselves. They're like, no, like I have to be this certain way. Guys don't like that sort of thing. And so they start shaming themselves. And it really kind of like tamps down their personality and becomes very limited and quite boring. So this is another reason why I like the BDSM community so much, because we're all about opening things up. We're all about saying like, hey, what's in that box? Let's find out. It's not a big deal. Like, I don't care. I care more that you're opening it versus what's inside. Right? So that's really where your attention should lie. Your attention should lie more on the opening of the box rather than what you're going to discover. Because what you discover is just what it is. It shouldn't be a bad discovery. I mean, unless in my book it has something to do with children or animals. If it's not that, then it's all good. I don't care. Okay? All right, so you're into scat. Okay, I'm not going to shit on you. I'm not into scat. But hey, you're into that? Fine. I don't care. Okay? Just, it's not going to be me. Go find somebody else's shit on your chest. But that's not me. Okay? But it's like I would feel satisfaction in helping somebody open that box and be comfortable with it versus living a life with the box closed and thinking that that's natural. It's not natural. It's not natural to be disconnected from ourselves. All right. And that's really the crux of what I do. That's the crux of the Dominance Academy. It's not about domination. It's about getting to who you are. That's really all it is. And that's a large part of what game is about as well. It's all fucking life. That's what it's about. And there's just tons of different effective pathways to getting there. All right. It's just about finding out what is best for you, what resonates most with you. And, I've had certain teachers, brilliant teachers, where I just didn't vibe with them. I'm like, I get what you're saying, but I don't get what you're saying. It doesn't hit me at all. I'm not inclined to, follow what you're trying to put down, and then other teachers where it was just like an instant click, and it was like, yes, I get you. And, I've had a couple of teachers who were that way. My Shifu, when I was living in the temple, this guy was amazing. Like he was like the wise father, but also like a fucking 7-year-old kid at the same time. Like he had the lightest heart of any person I've ever met in my life. But at the same time, he could turn into a tiger like that. It was wild. So he was just this like just playful kind of guy. It was just amazing. And then this other guy, former military, former Marine, and he was basically preparing for World War III. Like he started doing MMA before MMA was even a thing. Like he was combining different martial arts and things like that. Extremely talented and deadly in pretty much every single thing you could possibly put in your hands. And this is the type of dude, I don't know if you've ever come across people like this, where when they look at you, actually both of these guys could do it, but the other one, the Shifu, was much more kindness. The other guy had just sharp knives. He would see through you no matter what. Just looking at you, you get the sensation that he was seeing the real you, and you cannot bullshit this man. You just can't. It's impossible to bullshit this dude. And then he would make you pay for it if you tried. So, but just very powerful people where you get in their presence and you're like, yeah, like you are the dude, and I'm willing to listen to you. And because of the truth that they're bringing about within me. And, one was, like a firm punch in the chest, and the other was a firm hand on the back, or a loving hand on the back, an encouraging hand on the back. And so, both teachers had this ability to just pierce the bullshit. One was with kindness, one was with fierceness, but they both gave a shit in a different way. Okay. So, that's, as I veer off topic, that's kind of like what I like about this community, because it's about not dealing with bullshit. It's actually about directly dealing with your bullshit, not veering away. Okay. And that's so many of the problems that people have in their relationships. This is the guys that I deal with the most, whether they've been in a relationship for a number of years, like usually anywhere from like 7 to 12 years they've been together. Okay. Some are married, some are not. And there's been so much bullshit built up over the years of just like forgetting stuff, not engaging with things directly, not having a program, not having any sort of structure, a lot of things being swept under the rug and justifying, it's not a big deal, when really they're just like afraid of confrontation, or they don't know how to properly deal with the confrontation. Okay. And so this like leads to just this, ambiguously toxic shit that they're dealing with. And then they're like, well, we've been together for so long, let's just kind of like stick it out. And like sometimes the whole fucking thing peters off. And now they've just got like this shell of a relationship that they're both maintaining for appearances, because they both don't want to admit to themselves that what they have is just a piece of shit. And it's not even like a fresh piece of shit. Okay, it's the type of dog shit that's been like sitting out. You've seen it before, where it's like even lost the color brown. It's turned this like whitish gray, and it's like hard and crunchy. That's what their relationships have turned it to. Okay. And they're like, nah, it's fine. Like, like they'll go to the PTA meetings. Oh yeah, like things are good. Like, yeah, wife, you look so happy. They're not. Most people are not happy in their relationships because they don't deal with truth. They don't deal with themselves. They don't deal with themselves. And, I think that all just starts with the guy. It starts with the man, because he has the ability to affect, if he understood. And that's part of another like major issue is that, guys don't realize until they actually trust me and do some of the things that I say, and then they have the response in the relationship and in the woman, and they're like, holy shit, I do have influence. I can have influence. But they're scared at first. I'm just like, I know you're scared, but just say this. Trust me. Trust yourself. Just do what I'm telling you. Okay? And then they do it, and then the reaction is unexpected because they're thinking that a fight is going to ensue, or they're going to be dismissed, or they're not going to be listened to, or whatever. And it has the opposite effect, and like, holy shit. Then they come to a realization that they have the ability to affect and influence the direction and the type and style and the vibe of everything within their relationship. It's totally within their power. It's just not realizing it. It's not realizing that they're effective. So part of being effective is actually knowing that you can be. But it's like, we often have like a mentality where, especially if you're not like a faith-based person, where you need to see before believing. Whereas like faith-based people, they'll believe and then see, right? A lot of guys are like, no, I need proof. I need to see it with my own eyes before I say okay. And so I'm here trying to like work with these guys to have them trust themselves. Trust me to tell you to trust yourself, and then just do what I'm telling you to do. And when it happens, their eyes are like dinner plates, and they're like, holy shit, I did not expect my wife to behave that way. I did not expect her to have that reaction. Or it's like, yeah, bro, she didn't like this, but she listened. There was no pushback. Like, clearly she didn't like it, okay, because it wasn't appealing to what she wanted, but she's still doing what I told her to do. And she's not like super upset. And I'm like, yeah, that you're just discovering now that you have effectiveness. You can be effective. And so, this is just like the beginnings of, understanding yourself and what kind of impact you can have on the people around you. And when you're in this like kind of closed system of what we call a relationship or a marriage, then you have these parameters that you can then shape. You can shape and form them to be what's most conducive to you, conducive to the relationship, and conducive to the woman that's involved, that's willing to follow, right? But it's like, once you develop those sort of things, if she doesn't want to follow, it doesn't matter, because you now have yourself, you have the understanding of the container and the framework and everything that goes into that. So anyone who comes in, it's now easy to plug and play. It's like, look, does your puzzle piece fit in here or not? Okay. And, sometimes there's puzzle pieces when you're doing a puzzle, like it looks like it should fit perfectly. And like you can kind of make it work. You just kind of like stuff it in there. It's not the right fit, but it'll work. Okay. Some are like that. Some are just absolutely no fits, and some fit perfectly. Okay. Sometimes you have to shave a corner a little bit. Okay. Take out that X-Acto knife and shave the corner, and then it fits in there perfectly. So sometimes you got to do that. But like I mentioned, like with the, if I saw like a reel that I did today about the main thing that's preventing you from doing that, pulling out that X-Acto blade is just a fear of loss. Like really, if you get over your fear of loss, you can pretty much do anything you want. You can say, this is what I want. This is what I expect. This is what I don't want to see. This is where I want us to go. Like both like literally and figuratively. If you have no fear of loss, you can say these things with ease. Now imagine having that, but also being able to back it up with, I know how to care for you. I know how to guide for you. I know how to lead the situation. I know how to affect your mind. I know how to affect your emotions. I know how to affect your body. I know how to affect your spirit. Now it's like you've got, you're sitting there with 2 double-barrel shotguns. Like, hey, let's go, right? It becomes easy at that point. So it's like you can do anything you want the minute that you let go of that fear of losing a woman. When you let go of that fear, you're free. You are free from yourself. That's really what it is. Like all that shit is just you being prisoned by your own mind. And all you got to do is just start tracking it back. Go back further and further and further to find out why you have that fear to begin with. What is it that created that fear and that anxiety to begin with? Why do you need that? And this is how you do that sort of thing. This is how you grow. This is how you progress. I talk about this all the damn time when I was teaching illustration, and they were saying, wow, at the nice artworks that I was showing them. And then immediately after, they would be like, oh shit, I can't do that. They started judging themselves, comparing themselves. And then they'd say like, you know what? I just want to put my pens, my brushes and all that stuff down. I quit. And I said, no, pick all that shit up, put on your engineer's cap and stop saying wow or poor me and start saying how. How did they produce what they produced? How did they make an image so engaging that I could feel something by just looking at a picture? How were they that effective? Let's break it down. Let's look at the composition. Let's look at the lighting, the colors, the form, everything that's involved in creating a nice image. How did they do it? And what's the combination that they're doing here to produce an effect? That's how you get moving forward. And once you start looking at things in this sort of like engineer's mind without your feelings getting involved, that's how you can build. It's these feelings that stop you from building, right? Because then there is that poor me, or I can't, or I won't, okay? Instead of I am, right? And so when you're looking at your own discomforts, okay, of like, man, like I would say this, but she might get upset, or she might leave me, okay? You got to look back at where that was engineered in yourself and try to understand where that all came from. And, typically it's going to be connected to something having to do with your mother and father, all right? And the inner child looking for that acceptance and then never really growing past that. That's often what the case is, where they didn't get what they wanted, so they're constantly seeking it, or that's exactly what they were looking for and never grew out of it, so they're constantly seeking it still. Okay, so that's usually the pathways, like unrequited or trying to continue what they already have, but they're both immature. That's not grown man shit, okay? Now, that's not to spit on anyone who has this going on inside them. This is like a lot of guys, okay? But in order to become a man, you have to cut that old umbilical cord that's been sitting there for a long, long time. And understand that there's going to be a discomfort with that too. So you have to start asking, why in cutting that is it making me feel uncomfortable? What does that mean? Okay. And oftentimes, all right, the typical situation is it means that I'm going to be unacceptable. It means that I'm going to be unlovable. Because that's where early on that sort of thing was found out about love and caring and me, me having value, right? Someone seeing me and caring about me, right? That's where all that shit is connected. So it's like, well, so it translates to basically like, if I'm not afraid of losing a woman, then I'm never going to get love. That's really what's happening with like a lot of guys. They're worried that they cannot get love, validation, affection, someone really just giving a shit about them in their lives because they're afraid. They're afraid of losing it. So they don't challenge any of that. But the funny thing is, and this, I mentioned ironies in the game all the time, you get when you release, and you don't get when you're attached. It's just one of God's jokes, Then with the hormone thing, like guys reach their hormonal peak at 18, women reach their hormonal peak at 38. It's like God got bored and decided to just have fun. Okay, the game's like that too. While you're grasping, it's just gonna squeeze out between your fingers. Okay, the minute you let go and truly do not need, truly do not desire, it just falls in your hands. But once it's there, you no longer give a shit that it's there. But the funny thing is that when you don't give a shit, that's when you can actually give a shit. Because before, you gave a shit because of something deep within you that needed it. When you don't need it, you can actually give a shit. You can actually love a woman when you don't need her or want her. If you have a need, then that's not real love. That's tainted by all that bullshit in there that trails all the way back to that umbilical cord that you're afraid to cut, because you're afraid that if you cut it, no one's going to like you. No one's going to love you. No one's going to notice you. So you got to let it go. But once you have that freedom, then that's at the point when that cut happens. That's at the point when that starts shriveling up and dying. And now you can genuinely say, okay, what am I about? Who am I? Because you can't genuinely ask and discover and build who you are with that umbilical cord still attached, because it will affect all of your beliefs, your perceptions, and your decisions. Do you see? It's all connected. And it's such a very simple mechanism, all right? But it's really difficult to deal with, okay? But the funny thing is that when you deal with it, you realize that it's actually quite simple. You just cut. And when you do it, you're like, duh, that was so simple. Why did I think that was so complicated? It's not. It's very, very simple. Same with releasing women, letting them be free from the clutches inside your mind. Because frankly, they're going to do whatever the fuck they're going to want to do anyways. Okay? So really the clutches and the vices and the grasping is only in your head. It's not real. But you're doing it anyways. And this is causing you to be more firm, less flowing, less growing. Okay? If something's firm and dense, it's not going to grow. Things have to be relaxed and open. Okay? So have you ever done any sort of gardening? Okay? If you've got that's why you till soil. Right? If you've got hard packed soil and you just dig a hole and drop a seed in there, there's no air. Okay? It's too packed in, and the seed's really not going to grow. If it does, you're going to be quite lucky. What you have to do is till the soil, and you start loosening things up and start mixing it around, both the healthy and not healthy, but the used and unused soil. And you start tilling that around and loosening up, which introduces oxygen into the situation. And it leaves room for that seed to open up, grow roots, and expand. Okay? In order to expand, the things around it need to be looser and relaxed. Okay? So, when you're faced with these things, don't be a fucking pussy and veer away from them. Lean in It's counterintuitive because, we're designed like as humans to veer away from pain and move towards pleasure. Okay? Leave that for sales. All right? Sales, it's either you're selling pain or you're selling pleasure. Okay? But when it comes to being a man, do not move towards pleasure. Move towards pain. Move towards discomfort. This is what makes you a man. Because everything about you is connected to that. If you're constantly seeking comfort and relaxation and pleasure, you can be manipulated, mostly by yourself, but you're also open to the manipulation of the world around you and women. This is why simps are simps. Why a woman can just open her legs and he drops to his knees and says, whatever you want, baby. This is why you can literally create a bot. Like I was doing some research on bots and Midjourney and AI and all that shit like that. And then I realized that would just be a very bad way to make money, but I looked into it anyways. And like literally there's a way to recreate imagery with the same person, because if you use Midjourney, it's hard to create the same face each time. Okay. But there's now there's tactics to create the same face. So you can have the same face, the same identity, different outfits. And I'm like, shit, you can create a whole fake OnlyFans thing that sells imagery, okay, that's photo real. It looks like a real fucking person, and make money off of these guys. You can make shitloads of money. The guy that I was learning like how to do this from, he makes 35 grand a month. 35 grand a month. Okay, now that's gross. That's like, before taxes, but whatever. That's still a huge chunk of money. Some people make that in a year. Okay? He's making this a month just by creating an AI dream girl and has an Instagram and an OnlyFans and just selling imagery. So there's no video or anything like that. Now this is taking advantage of all of that bullshit. Now that's just not good living. That's not right livelihood. Okay, but whatever. If he wants to go to hell, he can go to hell. Like whatever. I hear hell's paved anyways. So if you're into motorcycles or skateboarding, that's the place to be anyways. But this is just, it's just indication of like how many guys are just fucked out here. And they think, they come to me, they come to guys like me who are teaching this sort of stuff, and they're like, well, what do I say? What do I do? Show me what to do. And it's like, yeah, but you don't fucking understand that you are the problem. And I know you hear this all the fucking time, but it's like, it's really simple. I have a katana, okay? I can give you my katana. I will kill you with a fucking butter knife. Because the guy is the thing. The guy is the sword, not the sword itself. I will decimate you with a fucking butter knife, and I will give you my extremely sharp katana to use. Because it's not the tool. And guys think that it's the tool. It's not the fucking tool. Like that guy that I was telling you about, like the guy who's preparing for World War III, he kicked my ass with a piece of string. With a piece of string about 3 feet long. Kicked my fucking ass with a piece of string. All right? It's not the tool. Actually, it kind of reminds me, if you ever seen the movie Blues Brothers, right? That old one with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. And they go into, they're looking to put the band together, all right? And they go into a music store run by Ray Charles, all right? And they're looking for instruments and things like that. And their keyboardist, he's looking around at the different keyboards and he's kind of messing around with one. And Ray Charles walks up to him and he's like, "Hey, you like that keyboard?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, it's pretty nice, but it looks kind of old and beat up. And, I don't know if it's got any life in there." And Ray's like, "Let me see about that." Like nudges him over. And then Ray, busts into like a whole like musical portion of the movie, but Ray just fucking rips on that keyboard. Of course, it's Ray Charles. Like, come on. But he kills it. All right. And then the scene ends and he goes, "Seems okay to me." Okay? So it's not about learning what to say. It really isn't. It's not about learning what to do. Okay? I was talking to a dominant, and he used to have like all these props and toys and tools and things like that. Now, when he goes to play parties, he just has like a couple of the basics because it's all here. It's all here. That's what it is. Now it's like just with a look or a hand gesture or just a little bit of words. And that's enough to leave such a strong impact on a woman that he doesn't need a crop. If he wants to use a crop or a flogger, it's because he likes it, not because it's anything beyond just a simple enjoyment. And that's really what a lot of BDSM is about. It's just about enjoyment. It's because you like it. It makes you feel good. It makes you smile. You have fun. Okay? But too many people are coming to it saying, how do I dominate? Okay, well, that has nothing to do with BDSM. It has everything to do with you. And as we just explored just a little bit, that there's a string of shit that's in there that you have to face. You have to look at this stuff. Because otherwise, you're just going to be a dude wearing a costume. And some people can wear costumes really well, and they go through life wearing their costume. Sometimes they're aware of the costume, and they know that they're full of shit. And some people are wearing the costume, and they think it's real. They think what they're doing is real. Now, we're all faced with that problem. I'm faced with that problem right now, okay? Like the me that I think I am, now this is getting too philosophical, but it's not real either. But let's just have one layer of that, okay? Like that's a layer that all humans have. Like who you think you are is not really who you are. Who you are is something completely different than your identity. That we're all, just is part of the human condition, right? We all have this one base layer of like identity that we think is us that's just manufactured and something that we all just believe, okay? But why have more on top of that, okay? That's where the problem lies, okay? So we all have the same problem, fine, okay? Like reality may not be actually what it is. This could all be a pure figment of imagination. Maybe you are the only real brain in existence, and all of this that you're observing is just electrodes stuck into the brain, and you're just in a vat of liquid. There'd be really no way to disprove that, okay? That's called hard solipsism. But the point is that, we have this base layer of illusion that we're all afflicted with as human beings. Why add layers to that of like, I believe I'm this other kind of guy on top of this? Like, it's nonsense. It's really nonsense. Get it down to as base level, as core level as you possibly can. And live that way. Live honestly and truly. Okay? All right. I hope this show was helpful, educational, and got you thinking about some stuff. All right. I appreciate everyone who came through on the live, and for those of you who are watching on the replay, it's been awesome. And I'm happy to see that people are coming through. My channel is growing slowly. All right. And I'm happy about that. My business has taken a much needed gas powered shift. And, so I owe that to creating the membership, which I did on Gumroad. So you can check that out at thedominanceacademy.com. If you have any questions about that, hit me up on IG at thedominanceacademy _, or you can email me at thedominanceacademy@gmail.com. And all my first calls are free. I love just hearing about people's stories and what's going on in their lives and what type of situations they have. I hear all kinds of different lives, different lifestyles, what's going on in their relationships, their marriage styles, what's happening. It's great, even just this stuff that's going on within single guys and the lives that they're having to deal with, because it's something I've been detached from for quite some time. So I just love hearing it all. So the first call, it's always free. There's no charge for that. We chat for about an hour and we can just figure out what's going on and what's even if it doesn't lead to any sort of coaching, it's just great to, for you guys to have just somebody to talk to and just express what the fuck is going on. Right. And you're free to ask any kind of questions you like. On my end, I just like hearing about other people's lives. Right. It's just, I guess, just part of my calling. So that said, yeah, thank you, Kevinism7. So that said, I'm going to leave you and bid you guys adieu. And we'll catch you on the next one. And, for those of you who have joined the membership, just keep your eye open for new material. It's putting out new stuff at least 1 to 3 times a month with new videos. And it's just getting even more and more detailed, getting into the finer aspects of BDSM, including behavior modification, having triggers, contactless orgasms, right? So basically, like, building it to the point where you tell her to come and she comes. I kid you not. This is very real. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, get in touch with me and we can see what we can do. All right, guys. Thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one.